Good evening to everyone present here with us today. This is Shreyan from IGCP, today's moderator. I would like to welcome all the viewers who have joined our platform for better exchange of knowledge that is going to be shared by our keynote speaker, Doctor, for today's session. With much pleasure and honor, let me just welcome a very renowned doctor, Dr. Sania Hasnan. Ma'am is MBBS MD Hospital Administration COO at Three Peak Health. With the help of ma'am and her wonderful insight, we will be taking a close look on today's topic, which is wearing two hats, the doctor manager challenge. Now, without any further delay, I would like to welcome ma'am at our forum and would like to hand over the session to her. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining in today. The topic today is how are we navigating the two challenging roles that we have, that is, working as a doctor while also managing a team and the day-to-day administration, whether it's in our own clinics or, if it's in a hospital you're working in and so on. I'll be taking you through some skills that, doctors, uh, you know, uh, must learn to be able to effectively manage a team and get the most out of them, while of course also juggling your clinical practice. Some of the qualities of a healthcare leader, one of the things is humility, right? That's I think one of the most important qualities we would want to see, not in just a doctor but also a leader. The respect that you show towards your team, and of course, obviously never be boastful about your work. Your work shows, and you don't need to speak about it. The vision that you have for your own self, where you want to reach, that vision is usually very inspiring for your team. The way they perceive you, the way they look at you, how the confidence you have in achieving your vision, and how you behave as a mentor while you're supporting your team to grow, investing in people, teaching them, training them, and taking them along with you. We all know it's difficult to grow in isolation. And of course, integrity, that is doing the right thing when no one's watching. That's again a very important quality for any healthcare leader, or any leader for that matter, or any person. And of course, constantly being collaborative with your team to achieve what you want to achieve. I'm going to explain a little more of the different skills. But as doctors, we often, you have your OPD running, you may be running into a surgery, you have your rounds for the day, you've got patients to see, and in between that, you're filling up a lot of documentation, you're giving orders to nurses and other team members. Sometimes you're also having to look at the stocks that you have in your clinics, manage your own appointments, manage appointments for your seniors, and so on. So how do you manage all of this? Now, one thing that's very important as doctors, who also would like to be leaders or manage their own setup, is to understand that you can't do things in isolation. You always need a team, a supportive team, a very good set of skilled people around you to support you. As an individual, you can only do so much, but if you want to scale anything, you need many hands to help you. And that's why it becomes very important to be able to manage a team effectively without having it to consume all your time in doing so. So, that's something we will delve on today. And as doctors, how do we manage people around us, get the most out of them so that they can do things that you want, right? What you want them to do. As a leader, you would always want your team to deliver things that you want them to do, and how do you get negotiate and navigate through that. One of the very important things that I have realized in while managing a team is to understand what their motivation is, and keep them motivated. If somebody is motivated, excited about coming to work, enthusiastic, they will do more than if somebody wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, another Monday, I have to go to work." That person's not going to give enough. So you need to understand what motivates everybody. This is one of the theories of motivation. I'm not going to get much into theory here. There are different ways to keep people motivated, but one of the simplest things, is it's called the Maslow's hierarchy, where different people are at different level in their lives, and we need to understand what motivates each person. For example, the basic, if you see at the bottom, the red, that's the basic need that a person has in life, right? These are basic skills. For example, food, water, a warm place to stay, security, safety. Just this is minimum somebody needs. So if the job is not giving the basic necessity. We call it hygiene. These are not even motivators anymore. Maybe for some it may be, depending on what kind of resources are available to them. But you need to, as a leader, ensure that they have these basic necessities met. Is the job paying well enough? Do you know that all of these are in place? Once these are in place, then we move to the green belongingness and love needs. That's to be able to make friends, to have a sense of belonging, for example, to have lots of friends, to have a social setup, where people know you, some recognition, etc. Right? And these are things that you can give to your people. For example, create a happy working environment where people are making new friends at work, as other than just having to go to work in isolation and come back. That would motivate them. If you have a friend at work, if you have if the work is giving you enough time to spend time with your own family. I'll give you an example. We used to work in the emergency department, and it runs 24/7. So we'd have night duties, we'd have Sunday duties, and we were always working with limited resources, which also meant that people had to do extra duties. In India we often do that. We have people doing extra duties. Now, what do you get in return out of those extra duties? What we put in place was, we gave people two options. One, either you take, what, for every extra duty or every extra 8 hours you do, you take a day off, or you get paid. One of the two, right? You could take, and it could be a double pay, triple pay, whatever it is that you want to put in place. Give them 1 or 2 days extra holidays. Now you will understand that different people pick different options based on where they are in their level of motivation. If somebody is, let's say, married with a family, would love to spend some more time with their family, they will take a few days off, and spend that extra time with their children or their spouse or their parents and so on. Versus somebody probably early in their career and wants to make more money, doesn't care about holidays, just wants to work and earn, would not take days off, would take the extra pay. So you'll have a balance of people, and you would be able to drive more work out of them, as long as people can choose. One of the other important part of putting an option like this for people was that they were given an option to choose. The moment you feel that you can choose, you have a choice, you're deciding things for yourself, that's when people are more motivated, instead of telling them what to do. So always try to give people that choice. People should be able to understand that they are deciding things for themselves. Then a lot of people are sitting here, which is the blue, the second last bit, which is esteem needs, prestige, feeling of accomplishment. And that's why we put in recognition in place. Somebody's done a good job, always recognize them, put them in a if you have a group meeting or something, call out their name and tell them, this person achieved this last week, this is what they did, and I'm really impressed, and great work done. Not in a sense of creating competition between people. That's not what we want to do. Never want to create competition. But everybody should feel that, okay, I'm appreciated. You give them a little award, you give them a little trophy, etc., which we would get from the market, and have somebody getting that. I'm personally not a big fan of employee of the month, because that again creates competition, and I've never liked creating competition within people. Everybody comes with different skills, and they're all wanting to contribute. I think everybody should be recognized in different manner, and we should have some recognition in place for things people are doing. So that's another very important need that people have. Not just, this is not at just a lower level of your career, early level of your career, in all levels, right? Promotion is, for example, you get promoted, or your salary gets increased, or you get as doctors we get awarded, we have different awards, etc., that we go for. These are all our esteem needs, that we are a feeling of accomplishment in our work. All of us are sitting in different levels of our Maslow's theory, like I say, or hierarchy of motivation. And the last one is self-actualization, where it's not just about work, etc. There's more you need out of life. And is a job giving you that, a sense of fulfillment, right? For example, am I contributing towards the larger good? Am I making a difference in the world? Is my job meaningful? There are people who've achieved all of this, and they don't, all that is below, and they don't care about that. They care about the bigger things. And it doesn't matter what what stage of your career. Different people are sitting at different level. For example, Gandhi, for instance, was probably at his level of self-actualization from the very beginning, and did not go through a lot of these needs. So it's very important to talk to your team and understand what motivates them, what they think about their job, what they want out of their job, and then to be able to give them that. For example, I'd like to have a job where I'm able to create a difference, I like a job where I am recognized. Some of the other things, I don't need that. I already have that in place. So a sense of achievement is something, I would need personally. I'm just talking about myself. We're all at different stages. There's no It's not really a hierarchy. It's just, it's different stages that we are in. um, and am I being able to contribute? Like, are you taking the most out of me, right? Am I being creative? Am I being able to use my brains into what I'm doing, etc.? Does the work excite me? These are things that I value. So you need to understand motivates people and give them that, what your nurse needs, what your if you have a PA, they need, what another doctor, a colleague needs. Also understand what your seniors are looking at, and be able to motivate people who are not just reporting to you, but in and around you. So that's something, as doctors, it's very important to understand. Talk to your team, understand what their needs are, what are they looking out of the job, or understand a little about their background, about how their day to day runs, understand about their struggles, understand what they want out of life, and see where they are, and then recognize them or give them that in return, so to keep them motivated. And this is not a one time thing. Remember, you have to keep, when you have these conversations, you should probably look at doing these conversations quarterly, depending on the time, or once or twice a year at least, to understand and put things in place, so that have a recognition model, put them in the right role, maybe give them some extra training, tell them that after 1 year, if you're doing well, we'll give you an additional course that you can do to upskill yourself, etc. So those are motivators that you can put in place. Additional salary could be, throwing money at a problem is the easiest thing, but then it only works at the, somebody who's sitting at safety and physiological needs. For everybody else, you wouldn't be able to solve it by just giving them extra money. If somebody says, work extra hours, forget your family for extra money, etc., I wouldn't do it. Somebody else would, and so on. So that's about keeping people motivated. One of the skills that, as doctors who are managing a team, we should need. Another skill that we should all know is how to bring in a change. Something is not working. This is not the process that you want in place. You want to make a change. Let's take an example. You brought in a new software. You want to bring in a new electronic medical record, or a new software that you want to work with. And what's the first reaction of everybody? Oh no, this is going to be another terrible software. We're going to be struggling with it. It's not going to do what it does, and I'm absolutely hating it, and but I have to do it, unfortunately, right? That would be the instant reaction of a lot of people. I've seen how terrible a lot of healthcare software are. But let's say you've got something and you want everybody in your team to, be welcoming of it. You want people to learn, and that it's the right thing to do. This is one example. There could be a change in process. You could be changing the way you work, or you were trying to bring in a new set of doctors to work in, or the management is changing. Any kind of change that you want to bring in goes through a certain process. You don't have to always follow the process. I'm going to run you through it just so you understand what these are. When you know them, you'll always put them into practice on your own, right? So one of the important things is to create a sense of urgency, why we need it, what will happen if we don't get it, right? For example, we're going to be slower. Volumes, like if you're getting a new software, volumes are going up, patients are getting impacted, we're missing appointments, we're not able to solve things. You create a, so obviously we will not be able to run things further, without having to bring in a new software, or without, things like the business is not doing well, the hospital is not making revenue, we need a new management, or one doctor is not being enough, we need to add another doctor. Whatever is this change that you're trying to bring in, you need to create a sense of urgency, so that people are a little worried. Oh, you know what, I think we need this looks like a crisis problem. So always, try to create a sense of urgency that we need it now. Then build a guiding coalition. For example, if you're trying to bring in a change, you will, I always see that there are some people who are not in favor of the change, some people who are very neutral, but some people are enthusiastic. Catch all of those people who are enthusiastic about it. Also catch all of some seniors, who can actually influence others, right? You create a small team of, 3 or 4 people who can drive this change for you. They're going, because you can't do it alone. You need to create a team, and such that okay, there are 5 people wanting it. It's difficult to fight that, right, versus one person. So build a coalition team, get a buy-in from people, tell them why this is important, instead of going and telling the whole community or the whole team of hundreds of people. Create that set of few people. It could be the CEO, get a buy-in from the finance person, from the head of the departments, etc., or from your lead nurse, and so on. People who are easy, always pick up the easy things first. People are easy to convince them. Get a team, show them the vision that this is what we will achieve, once we do this. And then get more, then add more people in every department. Add 1 or 2 people, who are enthusiastic. This is where we are reaching stage 4, who are enthusiastic, who are in favor of the change. Catch them, train them, equip them, and let them go and drive this. Keep telling people how important it is, to bring that change. Then start putting in, like, you're implementing a software, you're bringing in a new team, or adding a doctor, changing the management, changing a new process. Then you start looking at bringing that change in. And when you're bringing that change in, you need to be very closely involved in that, or assign a person who you can trust, or assign this guiding coalition team to do it. But have the right people in place to do it. When they are achieving this, you'll always come across roadblocks. Oh, you know what, resources are less, or the nurses are too busy, they don't have time. Then you have to solve for those, right? You can't delegate work or expect people to achieve something without giving them the right resources to do it. Remember that very well. You can't tell a nurse to learn a new software when she's really busy working, or even a doctor, or anybody for that matter, when they're very busy in their clinical practice, and you've not given them the time to learn the software. You've not trained them properly on the software, for example, right? You need to solve for these blockers. Unless you solve for blockers, how will people? You can't expect them to have a 10-hour constant work day and then learn a software in their personal time. That's not fair. Personal times for personal work. So then you need to give them that. So you have to give them resources, right? For example, was there a trainer who trained them? Did they have that 1 hour or 3 hours or 6 hours, whatever is needed in a week, to train them, right? Did they have some tests that you took to understand whether they've learned it, etc., or not? If you're looking at a new management coming in, has the management been has communicative, gotten to know people better, created a rapport with people, etc., right? If you've got a new doctor or another team worker coming in, have you introduced them well, right? Do they understand how important this person is, who this person is, or so on? If you change the process, for example, have you thought through the whole process, what will happen? And different things that you need. For example, you may need extra money for it, or you may need to buy some extra equipment to solve for it, automate some things, etc. Whatever it is, solve for the blocker. Then the sixth point is create easy wins. When you're making a change, right, it may sometimes, when you're making a change in putting a software into place, it's not something that happens overnight or in a week's time, right? Sometimes it takes weeks and months as well, or even a year, right? But in that long time that you would take to make a change, usually when I do a process change, if it's a small setup, I know it takes me about 15 days to a month, to just bring that change, and it takes me another month to actually stabilize it. So anything will take you at least a few months worth of time, so you also have to have that patience. But in that 1 or 2 months or 6 months or 1 year, whatever it is taking to bring that change in, you need to create small wins to keep people motivated, right? And showcase those little wins. Okay, this is what we achieved this week, and this was great, and now we've moved forward. This is what we've achieved next week. So those little wins that you create, if you're changing a process, a small change that you've made, how that has impacted a patient, for example, give just that as an example. It keeps people motivated. It makes people know that, okay, changes are coming, they are doing good things, I want to do more of this, right? That's something. And then ramp up. Once you've made a few wins, you've got everybody in place, then ramp up, push hard to get things done. Once the change is implemented, everything's implemented, remember, it'll fall back. And that very often happens, and that's where we fail. You have to make sure that it sticks, so then you put monitoring in place, make sure people are following it, then monitor them for a period of, it could be 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever time it takes, right, to make sure that the new change, anything that you've done, sticks, right? You can train them on a new software, get them to use it, and 3 months later, you will see they bypassed all the processes you made, they gone back to their initial work, because that's what we do. We try to stay in our comfort zone. You've taken somebody out, you need to make sure they stick to it, right? It's like a habit forming, right? We all try to work out one day, and then we all need to do it for 21 days or a month before we get into that new habit, right? So that's a habit forming that you need to create with a new change that you've made. So this is a way that you can bring in any kind of change. Like I said, you don't have to follow all these steps. It's not, but just keep it in the back of your mind. Once you when you actually are trying to make a new change, or you're trying to bring in some new process, or you want things done differently, you'll have this in mind that, okay, I need to get some easy people who are on my side convinced, and I need to create a team, and I need them to vouch for me, and I need to keep constantly talking about it, create some enthusiasm around people, show some small wins on what we have achieved, where we can achieve, and then keep an eye on everybody for a while to make sure that they're not deviating from it and they're not falling back. Now, in all of this, we'll talk about how we can manage fights in the organization, conflicts, communication, etc. But one of the very important things is to manage your own time as a doctor, as a clinician. And when you manage your own time well, you should also be able to teach this to your team to manage their time well, right? You are in clinical practice, probably 80% of your time will, or 90% of your time would be into clinical practice, and you only have probably 10, 15, 20% of your time for managerial work. But do keep that 10, 15% of your time for managerial administrative work, because it does impact your clinical work, it impacts your time. Do not ignore it. So how do you decide, how do you manage your time? This is an Eisenhower matrix. Every matrix has a name, and they're all from different leaders, etc., who've come up with this, but I particularly like this. All your tasks for the day can be divided into whether it is important or not important, it is urgent or not urgent. That's all. These are, so if you create this kind of a table for yourself, in the beginning, and gradually you'll get so used to it that you don't need to create a table. You'll have it in the back of your mind that, okay, this is important, this is urgent, and not. So let's take a look at one of these boxes, right? So this is on the level of importance, something that's more important and something that's more urgent. That's the yellow piece here on the left. Something that's important and urgent, that means only you can do it, nobody else has the resource to do it, and it is urgent, that means it needs to be done now. It could be a crisis, it could be emergencies that you're looking at, it could be a pressing problem that needs, a deadline that you need to meet, right? These would become urgent, important matters. You can't delegate it to somebody else. Nobody else has the skill to do it, and it needs to be done now. Make a list of those things, and only those you focus on and pick up now. Then there are things that are important, but they're not urgent. Please identify those, right? For example, there are emails coming to you. There are, you need to send out, for example, you need to create discharge summaries, etc., right? The patient's getting discharged tomorrow, for instance. Obviously, if you're not managing your time well and you're not doing things on time, everything will start going into your urgent bucket. But if you're managing your time well, discharge summaries can be, 80% of it can be made a day prior. Planning for a surgery can be done one day prior, and there's no urgency. Then you prepare for it and plan for it and keep it for, once you know that, okay, these are the things I need to do, you keep it for later on. And you pick it up in the second half of the day, or you pick it up when you have time. These are not urgent. So preparing, planning, preventing something, clarifying something. If you somebody reaches out to you, some in your team, and they want to have a discussion, you don't need to have every discussion now. You can tell them, okay, why don't you schedule some time in my calendar, and let's meet at 3 in the afternoon or 4 in the afternoon, and let's pick it up there. So that's your important. It's important because somebody's reached out to you, they need your help. It's important, but you can do it. It's not urgent. You can do it later. Now, these boxes in the bottom are some of those things that, really unnecessary, occupy our time. Something that's not important yet urgent, right? Somebody's made a mistake. Somebody's, for example, unnecessary calls that come, but, you've been called into a meeting, etc. For example, the company's decided, okay, there's a meeting, there's a training session that, you know already what's there. It's probably a repeat, etc. These pressing matters, these are not important. Put these in your categories. And I try to use my time very carefully. I try to keep away from things that are not important. If they are urgent, I delegate it to somebody else so that it gets done on time, but it's not taking up my time. So if something is urgent that needs to be done, it obviously needs to be done, but I don't have to do it. I identify those things, that can somebody pick this up for me? Does it am I the only one? And if sometimes that happens, that you're the only one who knows everything, then also you're doing something wrong. You really need to upskill and train and invest in your team so that they can pick up things for you, right? Try to train, whether it's the nurse or it's a junior doctor or it's a colleague who can also do your discharge summaries, who can also plan for surgeries, who can also do some bits for you. Train more and more people so that the things that don't only need your skills can be picked up by somebody else. There'll always be urgent things coming your way. And this is the last piece, which is not important and not urgent. Just leave it out. Stay away from it. Your time is important, right? As doctors, and how much each hour of a doctor costs, etc., right? You want to use your time wisely. And I'm not saying it all comes down to money. You want to use your time for your family. You want to take your holidays. You want to have some time for your own personal growth. Read a book, etc. So you want to use your time wisely, right? Keeping in mind that you are also growing as a wholesome person, and your job is also very, very important, right? You need to do well there. Anything that's in bucket 4 should be kept away. You should not be wasting your time on it at all. Take it out of your list. So try to list out everything that you have in a day, that okay, these are things I've done, I have to do, and put it in one of these four buckets, and see things that you have to absolutely stay away from those activities at all point. I'll be taking questions at the end, but if you have any questions on each of them, do ask. Now, this is again another interesting, area that we often come across. You see, in hospitals, there are often a lot of conflicts. Everybody wants something different to do, and you have to constantly manage people's expectation. Work with member team probably that's competing with you, etc. So now, how do you manage conflicts? There are different ways of managing conflicts. I'm just going to run you through this, just for you to keep this in mind. Again, you don't have to follow it all the time, but when you're managing conflicts, there are two scales here. How assertive do you want to be when you're managing it, and how cooperative when you want to be. Now, you don't always have to be assertive about everything, right? There's one of the sides out of these. There are these four, and there's one in the middle, right? There's competing, collaborating, avoiding, accommodating, and compromising. You will pick one of the stances depending on the situation, and you'll not always be in one of these. It all depends on the situation, depends on the person in front of you, depends on the matter. For example, if it's a matter of morality, for example, instance, right, that okay, what is being done is unethical, then you would want to have a more assertive standpoint, right? You will want and assertive. Competing is something that I usually never do. A lot of us do it probably in our early stages of career, or we may do it as an organization when we're competing with somebody else. But then as an individual, I try to avoid this, where I'm not cooperative and I'm very assertive. Right, that is very rare. It would probably happen where there's something that's very personal, very important to me, very very. It's probably something of an ethical consideration, or it's probably something that will absolutely impact patient care. And no, I will not compromise. I am not listening to anything. It has to be done that way. In that case, you will probably hold a very assertive, low cooperative stance. But on most other times, if you're still trying to drive something about patient safety, something about morality, something about licensing, legality, etc., you will want, again, very assertive, that yes, it has to be collaborative, like hear what they have to say, make them feel like they are being heard. You're make it look like they are also deciding. So instead of telling them, hey, this has to be done this way, I want it done this way, or you have to do this, that these are not the words you use. You can create the same impact by saying, hey, I feel that this is a great idea. What do you think about it? What would you like to do? Right, and then have that discussion. It might take you 5-10 minutes longer, but you will get it'll actually not take you 5 10 minutes. You're constantly arguing, that'll also waste your time. You'll get a better buy-in when you put it like, can we do this, right? If I tell you, hey, can we do this, versus I tell you, hey, you have to do this, I'll still get the same outcome, except the person in front of me will be disappointed. And the moment I take a stance when I'm ordering something, the other person's more defensive, and their instant reaction is to reject that order, be dismissive of that order. Versus if I so the way you talk to people, conflict management is all about how you phrase your sentences and how willing you are to listen to their point of view as well. Then there is, so that's about collaborating, right? You're still being assertive, you still want to get things done like your way because you feel that is right. But then you're taking others' opinions into consideration, sitting, convincing them, understanding where they're coming from, why they're saying, and solving things for them and coming to a decision. Avoiding is something we do when we are, again, early, we haven't learned a lot about conflict management, managing people, etc., where we're not cooperative and we just run away from the problem. And it doesn't matter, it's not important. Can avoid certain things, but again, this is something that, as leaders, I typically avoid doing, where it's not important to me. Some clerical administrative decision, I'm not, I don't like it, doesn't bother me too much. I may have a point of view, but happy to avoid. I will probably avoid it. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to pick every battle. Another way is accommodating, right? Something that's, again, you don't want to be this, you can, you take this kind of a stance where there's not a lot of clarity in what you want. It's not about morals or ethics or safety. It could be any other constraint. Is not, nobody's sure of what's the right answer. Then you've got to be very accommodative and very cooperative, that I don't know what the right thing is, so I can't be assertive, but I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I'll probably have a point of view, but I'll accommodate all your views, and we can probably take a decision together, because there are a lot of people sitting in this room who've got more knowledge in the space than I have. So I need to be very accommodating. So especially me, I mean, right, I'm a doctor by background. I haven't been practicing medicine for a lot of years. I've been into management, running hospitals, etc. So if I want to get, let's say, buy a new equipment in the hospital, or make a change a clinical process, create a new clinical pathway, I am never going to pick up a competing or any kind of a position, but accommodating. I will have the doctors in the room and ask them what the right process is, help each doctor come up with their ideas, and accommodate their viewpoints, and then build something that suits all the doctors, and also is beneficial to the patient, right? Something that's practical and realistic, not something that I want, but something that they want. And that's the stance I would take: highly very cooperative and low assertive. And then there's a ground, middle point, which is compromising, where again, lack of clarity, nobody knows, they don't know a lot, you don't know a lot, but you have to come to terms. This you typically take is also because where relations are important. Remember, conflict is not about always putting your point forward, or it is not about the person in front of you. Any problem that this is something I've always learned in work, and I've always kept in mind, is when there's a problem at work, it's not about the person. The person is not the problem. The problem is the problem. You and that person, both of you together, are trying to solve that problem. Remember, always make sure that when you're solving a problem, there is any problem, remember the person you're talking to, who you feel that that is involved with the problem, they should be on your side. That, okay, this is a problem, I've come to you. It's not about you, right? I'm not complaining that you're the problem. There is a problem here. I want you and me to work on this together. What can we do so that this problem goes away? And that's how you solve problems at work. Whenever you're giving feedback to somebody or something you're unhappy about, remember, it's never, never, never about the person. You remove the person from the job, the next person will come and you'll have the same problems. They'll make the same mistakes. They'll have different personalities, and you'll constantly have conflicts at workplace. It's never that there are no conflicts at workplace. So always focus on the problem. Don't focus on people. People aren't the problem. It is the problem that's the problem. Get people on your side. Two of you, three of you, solve the problem together. That's how everybody should feel. Then another thing that's extremely important at workplace is to communicate, right? One of the things I absolutely don't like, and I keep away from, is some doctor or some colleague sending me just a quick WhatsApp chat, or ordering something on WhatsApp. It's not thought through. Most of the times you're just chatting, something comes to our mind and we just write that down. That's not the way, and that's why we've got emails, and we've got other ways of communicating, because you need to think through orders that you're giving. Your communication needs to be clear, it needs to be concise. You should know what message you're communicating. Should never be vague, not use jargons. And then listen to people. It's very important. If people are they feel that they're heard, their points are taken into consideration when you're talking to them, account for what they have said, and then probably repeat, oh, this person said this, I think it's a great idea, and apart from everything else we're doing, we're going to implement this as well, or like she was saying, or like he was saying, I would like to add to that, right? That's the way of talking, so that that you've shown, exhibited that you're listening to people, and you've incorporated what they've said, instead of being dismissive of what they're saying. Tailor your message to the audience, right? Whether you're talking to another doctor, you're talking to the CEO, or whether you're talking to a patient, etc. Your conversation, your body language, everything would be very different. That's something you have to take care of, and constantly have empathy. Understand what how people are feeling, where they're coming from. Let's say you're angry, you scolded somebody, somebody started crying at work. You're not going to continue scolding them. At the moment emotions go up, conversation goes out of the window. Your people are not thinking right, and they're not going to act on it. So you need to keep emotions stable at all point. Never raise your voice. I never do that. Never create a charge triggered environment. Never fly off the handle, because the moment you raise somebody's emotion, they're not going to act right, they're not going to think right, and they're not willing to have a adult conversation at that point. So no matter how angry you get or how big the problem is, you also always have to keep a calm demeanor. You could be very angry inside your head, you could be panicking inside your head, but as a leader, you can't exhibit that, right? It's something like you're in a ship, and the ship is going to is drowning, and if you all look up, or in the flight, right? If there's a lot of turbulence in the flight, what do? You look at the face of the air hostess, right? If she's looking calm, or he's looking calm, you know that there's nothing to worry. But the moment you see panic on their face or anything, you will get worked up. Same thing for doctors, right? As patients, you're just lying down there, and we all learned, right, that okay, don't have any expression on your face, because they look at your face and they know that okay, am I gone or am I going to be okay? And that's the same thing at all points. It's not in separate scenarios. You have to show stability of emotion as a leader, because people look at your face, they look at every expression to know, and they will be worried or confident about what's coming next based on how confident and calm and composed you are in difficult situations. So that's something that you have to be cautious of all the time. It comes with practice, and of course constantly focus on positivity, right? Don't always be dismissive, don't always bring out complaints, etc. Constantly show, oh, we did great. Like we started in our company, one of the things, we're a healthcare company, and we started weekly wins. We only talk about, and every day, every week, and on a Friday a long email comes from one of the team members on everything that we achieved over the last 1 week. We're not looking at the negatives. We talk about the negatives in closed room and we solve it. We talk about all the good things, and we put out everybody's name. This person, this, they did this, they achieved this, now this has happened new, this is what we've done. Over 120 patients seen last week, so many discharges, so many, etc., and so on. So that's the kind of a happy positive email or communication we always do at our workplace. Keeps people motivated, keeps people happy. I don't know for some of you were in my last session, but I told you that workplace needs to be a very happy place to come in. You've got 24 hours in a day. You're probably sleeping 6 to 8 hours, so 1/3 of your time. Let's take that away. Now you're left with the remaining 2/3. Split that into two. Half your time is at home and half your time is at work. Literally half your waking life is at work. It cannot be a horrible place to work in, and not for you and not for your team members. It needs to be a nice place you look forward to coming to, and that's the environment as leaders we should always be creating. The last thing is how do you run an effective team? This is, just something so very interesting. When I was studying management, I came across this. They've done a research. It's probably one of the longest researches that have gone, which is about almost 30 years. It's called the Hawthorne effect. I'm not going to get into the details, but they did lots of different research. They put people in different cohorts. This is interesting. So they wanted to see the impact of different environmental situation within your workplace, to understand how it impacts productivity, right? Like, are people more productive or are people less productive? So one place they did an experiment where they gave people more, they made the place more brighter, there was more light, and the other place, the place was dim. Another place, the experiment they did, they gave them more tea coffee breaks, etc., and the other place they didn't. So these kind of different experiments they did. At the end of it, they were probably expecting a very obvious result, right? That wherever they gave more, they would have had more productivity. But the funny thing was that there was more productivity in both the cohorts. Where there was more light, there was more productivity, and there was less light, also there was more productivity. And I'm wondering, what happened, what caused it? And then they eventually realized that it isn't, while of course the environment is important, etc., but it wasn't the environment that was making the productivity go up. It was the fact that for this research they had put people to observe these people during that. And because people, when you observe somebody, right, they perform better. You would have also seen, right, where when you're doing some work and somebody comes in, and is watching you, you will probably do things better. You will at school, in school you'll be pretending to write, or taking notes, etc., when the teacher walks past you, or even at workplace, and that's why we have managers, your people watching you closely, right? This thing works. So what I'm trying to come to is, you know observing what your team is doing, being involved, monitoring them, right, watching over them, makes people perform better. So you have to, like, walk the talk, as they say. Go and see what people are doing, once in a while walk into their room and just observe what they're doing, and you will see, constantly have that monitoring. I'm not saying you're trying to snoop on them, or monitoring may not be the right word, but just being involved in their work, watching over them, that improves productivity as well. It's a small thing, but sometimes you can involve that in your day-to-day work, and as and when you have time. Lastly, a few things that I make sure I do at my workplaces, I invest in people. For example, for me, people are very important. They are the drivers. It's all you can get, and you can scale. The more people you have, excellent people, train them, motivate them, equip them. Spend time training people. Making them learn about things. Even if, for example, I had a PA join us, who's not from a health. PA is a personal assistant in this case, who had no healthcare background, train them about a lot of healthcare work because he or she needs to understand the, industry that they're in. They all don't come from healthcare backgrounds, etc. For a nurse, training them, something that a doctor would know, or and so on. So more you educate and train people, I've seen they always are motivated. They're more willing to listen to your orders. They're more willing to accept things that you ask them to do when they feel that you're investing in their development. To invest in people, take time out to train, like I said. Delegate effectively. When you ask somebody to do work, always ask yourself this question: have I set them up for success or failure? Which means, are they will they be able to do this? Have I explained the job properly? Have I given them time to do what I've asked them to do extra? Have I trained them, explained them, or do they have the resources if they're doing it with other departments, etc.? Have I spoken to the heads of other departments to, allow them to do what they're doing, or they have to constantly go, walk into a room and the other department says, get lost, I don't have the time, or I'm not interested, or you can't come in here. They'll fail at it, right? So when whatever work you're giving somebody, you need to know, do they have all the resources? Also, do they have the authority, right? If you're telling them to do something with a team, then you have to call out to others that, okay, this person is leading this initiative and I would like all of you to support, and they have my full support and I want them to do this. So whatever you need to give them to do their job effectively, always ask yourself, have I given them that? And lastly, are they interested? And I usually pick and choose. If I'm working with a team, I pick and choose, what people like to do. We all have to do things we don't like. Probably, 20, 30, maybe 40% of our work would be there that sometimes. But as much as possible, I like to give people what they are, they already know, they like to learn. Ask them, is this something? Um, and they'll be able to do a job much better. Of course, there's always be things we'd have to do at work that we don't like. They're monotonous, boring. That's all part of our day. But as much as possible, give people things that they enjoy doing. Monitor, like I said, monitoring is important because of this example of the research I gave you, right? Watch over people and don't I've noticed the moment I go away, I've been very busy and I go away from watching them for a couple of weeks, etc. Things, start breaking down and people start deviating, etc. So, as a leader, you have to constantly keep an eye on things. As a manager, you have to constantly be involved with your team. It's not a one-time thing. It's not something you can do once a quarter or something. You have to do it on a daily basis. What I do is now, depending on the kind of work I'm doing, have a weekly catch up when needed so that we look at what we've achieved for the week, what are we planning to do next week, and a quick daily stand up. My daily stand up with a team of, let's say, the team that I work with directly, and they could be working with others, it would be about, let's say, it could be 8 people or 6 people. Typically, that's a good size of the team that reports directly to you. um, and then there could be people reporting to them and so on. But with that team, you have a daily stand up of not more than 15 minutes. Ask them, what are you doing today? What did you achieve yesterday? Any blockers for the day? Anything you want from me? And then that also brings this same effect that I'm talking about. People know what you're doing. They have to call out what they're doing. So they'll constantly themselves keep structuring. They'll know, they'll be ready for the conversation. Everybody gets a few minutes to say, and they have visibility on their work. They're all being able to showcase their work and getting things solved. So the daily stand-ups are usually very effective in all workplaces. And a weekly catch up, just to see how things are, what we've achieved, talk about things. And once in a quarter or once in 6 months, I do meet with the team individually to ask how they are. Do they like the work? What is it that they're looking for? Do you feel, it's a good environment to work in? Is there any other support that you need? Constantly be supportive of your team. Never ever throw them under the bus. Something goes wrong, you have to be responsible for it, not your team. You have to take responsibility and take blame for other people's mistakes that are reporting to you, to a large extent. I'm not saying always, to a large extent, because it all comes down to how well you've equipped them, how well you've trained them, how well you have enabled them to achieve what they're doing. There'll always be some bad apples and you'll not be able to solve them. And we could probably, that could be another discussion, as a team, I've had to let people go as well. Done my bit of trying and solving for them, but then they were not fit for the job, and they cannot continue working. That's another thing. But as much as possible, you've got a team, you've got to be very supportive of your team. So these are just few skills. Just have this in mind. None of this, nobody needs to learn a lot of theory, and that's why I kept away. I haven't gotten into a lot of details, but these are some of the things I keep at the top of my mind when I'm resolving a conflict, when I'm talking to my team member, I'm managing my day-to-day team, keeping the team motivated, getting the most out of people so that I'm efficient. I can't be efficient just by myself. I need people to do a lot of things. The more there are people to work, the more you can get done. One person can do 10 hours of work, but 10 people can do 100 hours of work. And have you equipped the other 9 to do a job as good as you? That's something that I was trying to I'll be happy to constantly help doctors achieve that. That brings me to the end of my presentation. It's just some books that I feel, if you have time, you can read. Of course, you're busy, and as doctors, a lot of us, the reading comes down because you've already, you do so much reading at work and college and etc. I know, but if somebody is interested in a little bit of a read here and there, you could, and then there are, I think, softwares and website that can just give you a gist of what these books are telling as well, and if you don't have the time to read it all, etc. These are some books, as and when I come across some more. These are some initial books, of course, that doctors could look at reading. Not all of them. You can pick and choose what you want, or just get a summary of these and see what there is, and pick and choose what you want to learn. Right, that brings me to the end of my session today. Let me know if there are any questions. Happy to take them. Anything practical that you would like me to discuss with you?
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful presentation. We do have some question if you like to take that up.
Sure.
So, ma'am, the first question is, how does a dual role impact decision making in clinical practice?
Right, that's a nice question. So, in clinical practice, decision making, one thing that would always take priority is your clinical work. Right, typically, if you have emergencies, you have urgencies, etc. For me, those are only clinical. None of the administrative things are absolute emergencies, etc. Like, I go by that rule: everything can wait except for patient care. So I usually plan my day where the first half, or the first 3/4 of the day is for patient care, and the last bit is for planning, supporting, etc. What we tend to go wrong with is we don't plan our day, and we leave out the administrative decision making or the administrative part of our work, because it's also boring. It's not our area, so we don't do it. But then it piles up and it impacts your clinical work. So first half, first 3/4 of the day, clinical work, and then pick up the administrative. That one. Second, another important thing is, if you have to give work to people, that's again another decision that you have to take. And if to give work to somebody else to do, that needs to be done in the morning. I remember working in some places where I was my junior, and my boss would call me in the evening at 5 o'clock, to meet, and then give me a lot of work. That's the worst and the most inefficient boss. You have to give work, it has to be done in the morning. You can't give somebody work at 5 in the evening and say, I want it tomorrow. They're not going to go in. You can't expect people to go home and do work. You give them work first thing, so that you're not a blocker. It's not sitting with you because you're not working on it. So it shouldn't be sitting with you. Give it to them. Let them start working on it. So the moment there's work to be given to somebody, that's you should give that first, and use all your bandwidth, all your hours where you're fresh, you're charged and you have the energy, into your clinical practice work, and pick up the other things later. Another thing that I do is I try to plan my day before I come in. I spend about, it doesn't take a long time, 10-15 minutes, just thinking over, okay, what does the day look like, what am I going to do, something for me to give to somebody else. Okay, so up to that first. Any emails, etc., pick it up later. I have a bunch of, you've got an OPD, you've got a surgery coming in. Before the surgery, if I go in, am I delaying something, move that out of your bucket, give it to somebody else. That's how you would plan your day, right? Don't keep things in your bucket that can go into somebody else's. That's something that is important. And as doctors, I'll tell you one thing: you're very good at decision making. All right, you already are. You're constantly triaging patients and deciding what's more important, what's less, right? You're personal life and your managerial career or work, etc., none of them is any different. And that's why I said, doctors make the best leaders, they're the best decision makers, because you're constantly taking decisions in a tough spot. So you should very easily be able to use your skill that you've learned over the years to decide that, okay, what is critical, what needs to be done now, what doesn't. And just give things to others to do, right? Don't become a blocker. Always give things. Somebody else should be able to pick up things on your behalf that are not important. You have to do the surgery, fine. Everything else somebody can do. Give it to them.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, what trends are shaping the future of doctor manager in healthcare?
So, see, while we've got AI, we've got a lot of automation coming in, etc. But there are these soft skills, the human skills that nothing can take over, and those are the most, important skills that we need to exhibit. And this will be very important in the future. There's a point where a lot of technical work that we do, mundane, monotonous work, all of that will get automated with time. But then your critical thinking, your empathy, right, understanding people, communicating, saying the right things at the right time, looking at somebody's face and knowing what to say next, etc., right? These are very important skills that nobody can replace. That's number one. And number two, as doctors, we already have a very high level of empathy, and we understand healthcare much better. Till a few, not a few, but yeah, about more than a decade ago, there were hardly any doctors in managerial roles. We always had people who were absolutely non-medical, running hospitals, etc. Not understanding, not having the empathy or an altruistic nature towards healthcare. But now doctors, there are a lot of doctors who are doing managerial leadership roles, etc. So there, in this, for example, the career that I'm in, I learned this years ago, and that's why I picked this, and I realized that this is a growing field, where as doctors you already understand how a hospital or a healthcare system works. You understand how other doctors work, so you know how the healthcare system goes. You have worked with patients, so you understand how what patients need. You have that empathy and understanding. You know everything. You're well equipped to run. And if you get some managerial leadership, etc., all these other skills, and these are just life skills, to be honest, more than managerial skills, you will use this in your personal life as well, how to manage conflict, communicate, and so on. Once you learn all of that, you become a very effective leader in a healthcare space. So this particular doctors being having a managerial role, etc., is the future. We don't want I to a large extent don't like a lot of external folks who are not with any medical background trying to drive healthcare. Absolutely, it should be somebody who's got the ground knowledge of things. That's one. Having said that, of course, I do like to bring in people from other industries as well, from the aviation industry, from the hospitality industry, because there are things you learn from there also. But to lead a setup, I feel it should always be somebody from a healthcare who has that empathy, altruism, and understanding, and understands other doctors and so on. And like I said, there are mundane, monotonous tasks beyond a certain point. Beyond a certain early stage, like in early stage of your career, you need a lot of technical skills you have to showcase, because but as you grow to be more and more senior, you'll realize that it isn't the technical skills. You're not doing a lot of ground job. You're constantly managing team and motivating people and getting things out of people. And those would be the everything that I talked about now. That's going to be your day to day. Get the most out of people, and that's the future of I mean, the doctors into managerial. With time, you'll see. You look at the medical director or the CEOs, they're looking at finances, etc. They're looking at strategy. That's a different skill, but they're not constantly, sitting and creating spreadsheets or charts or looking at patients, etc. They have these skills to run, and yeah, that's what you would like to keep developing.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one last question. How should a doctor manager handle conflicts between clinical team and hospital administration?
Yeah, it's a very nice question, and one of it's funny you asked this, because one of the reasons why I got into hospital management, etc., was because I used to hate them. As a doctor, they were never in favor of. At least I felt they were not in favor of the doctors, and they don't understand, and they decide something, etc. Right? Let's say as a manager, I've told you, right? This is what everything I told you in the presentation. We try to do that to understand and do things that doctors want from us. But as a doctor, what would you do, right, to manage the administration? I think one of the things that's important is first understand why the hospital administration is doing what they want to do, right? Never go from Don't go as a group and say, "Ha, we want this." Then obviously they will be very defensive. Try to understand what is it, why do they want it, then tell them, okay, this is how it's going to impact us. For example, it's taking away extra time from us. These are the hours. Show them some facts. I will always show them some facts that, okay, we're working for 8 hours a day, for example. It could be more or less 8 hours a day. These are the number of patients we see. This is the entire time that's going in. If you're adding some more work, I would like you, don't ask them, tell me where is the space or how are we going to do this. No, you're adding some more work. I would like to get your support in solving in a manner that we can do this, right? Always show that you are willing. Like the moment you exhibit to somebody you're on their side, they will automatically be on your side and want to solve it, right? Like I said, it's all come down to communication and being smart about how you handle conflicts and things, right? Be cooperative, exhibit cooperation. You could be assertive, this is important, you have to drive it, you don't want some change coming in or you don't want something happening, but then you have to show absolute cooperation that, okay, on your side, you know we're willing to do this. Here are some challenges. If you could help us solve it, these are our problems. But all, and as a doctor who's also wanting to exhibit leadership, etc., and going to the management, you'll always try to come up with a solution, that these are the problems, this is one solution I have, but happy to discuss. I'd always say this is some idea that I've come up with. This is what I feel we could also implement so that it does this, but happy to discuss, get your thoughts on it, and so on. So I always go with a body language where I am being the part of the solution and I'm not being a part of the problem. Like, I'm here to solve this. I accept what you're saying. Here are some concerns. Can we, tweak it a little bit to solve for things, right? That's how. And like I said, at the end in my head, I'm assertive that I don't want this happening because it's going to impact doctors adversely, etc. But my entire way of managing the administration would be very cooperative. Reason with them, explain to them, because a lot of times, unfortunately, the administration is not very involved in day to day. They don't know what's the ground reality. But if they do, very often you wouldn't have a conflict. So I'm guessing somebody who's asked this question is because your management is obviously not very involved and doesn't understand what's the day to day of a doctor's life. In that case, show them, call them into the place, let them have a look. Like I said, get a bind, and you don't have to solve everything in one go. Remember that all conflicts don't get solved today. That you want a solution today or you want a solution tomorrow. You've had one conversation, you've told them something, you can leave it for now. Even if you don't have a solution, go back after another few days, after another few weeks, keep going back. Have multiple discussions with time. Think and go, and always articulate and think of what you're going to say. Don't just walk in. Think of what you're going to say, think of what they are going to say. If so plan it in your, and go like prepared. Try to go prepared, and don't have, like I said, don't you never have to solve everything in one or two conversation. That's just a triggered charge conversation, lack of patience, where you're like, I want it now. A lot of things don't get solved in a day. So if you want something done, if there maybe, let's take an example of a software, or let's take an example of a new management coming in or a new process coming in, or they've asked you, some more paperwork has been added, right? Then you have to ask them that, okay, this is the time that we have. I just trying to understand. They say, oh, there is some, new, they're going for JCI accreditation or NABH accreditation, and that's why, all of this paperwork comes in. Then they ask them, okay, then show them factually that, this is what is happening on ground. This is the kind of bandwidth. We also want the company or the hospital to be NABH accredited and JC accredited. And let me know if you need some more support from us to do it. However, we're kind of running short of time here. We would like to add some more paperwork, but can we see how we can increase a little bit of time that we're spending on each patient so that we can take that 5 or 10 minutes out additionally? So, like I said, this is just a very loose example, but you have to always exhibit you're on their side, and you should be. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's working for the same cause. The moment you exhibit that, I'm sure the person in front of you would also do that. Like I said, probably you don't make changes in a day, it takes a while, but it all comes down to how cooperative you exhibit you are, and how collaborative you want to be. You hear them, hear their point of view, why they want to do it, be that nice listener, And if you don't have a solution that day, go back. I've heard you. I understand why you need to do. Let me see how I can solve it for you. And then go back again and tell them, okay, this is something I've come up with. And that's how don't take them as hostile management. Like literally, if you want to solve conflicts with take them as if there was somebody reporting to you or you were responsible for them. How nicely and how supportively would you get these done? It's the same thing. It's no one person different from another. Kind of almost can treat everybody similarly. I hope that answered your question there.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. So, thank you. That's all from our audience, ma'am, for answering all our questions. And before concluding, ma'am, any take home message from your end?
Yeah, I think one thing that that's very important for me, and I always make sure I do is keep a great working environment, keep a happy working environment. Never make people feel terrible at work. I think that's very important. Don't make it difficult. And you want to do well, you have to get a team. You have to get an efficient team. You have to learn to get work done from people, equip them, and you'll do a lot more than you can do as an individual person. So.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. It's our pleasure that you have joined our session. And with this, I would like to conclude today's session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, ma'am.